Hey, AP Stat students, first day of notes, let's get going. Unit 1, what can we learn from data? Really, the goal today is just to make sure that you have some basic terminology down. We're not doing any real huge math today. Again, just basic terminology. So let's get going. Our first definition here, individuals. They are objects described by a set of data. When we are talking about individuals in data, that doesn't necessarily mean we're talking about people. If we are looking at a whole truckload of apples to see how many good apples there are in there or how many bad apples there are in there, our individuals are apples. If we're studying the effects of medicine on dogs, okay, or a certain type of breed, those dogs are the individuals. So that's just important to note that when we are dealing with statistics, the individuals are not always people, okay? Good to know. Pause as we're going on. I'm going to talk faster through the videos. That gives you the freedom. If you really understand it, it's going to go quick. And if you don't understand it, you have the ability to pause, write things down, rewind. But I can't stress enough when you're watching these videos to maybe have a questions page. So if anything comes up, you write down a question, let me know, and we'll go from there. All right. Next one, a variable, a characteristic that changes from one individual to another. Okay, so we're looking at individuals. What's a variable? If we're looking at our AP Stats classroom, one variable would be your eye color. Okay, that can change from person to person, or your age. Okay, birth date, person to person, where you live. That's a variable. Okay, I live in New Hope. Someone else lives in Plymouth. Someone else lives in Robbinsdale. That's changing from person to person. So in statistics, we always have a variable of interest. What are we interested in? What do we want to know about this population of people that consists of individuals or population of dogs or whatever we're looking at, right? We're interested in some sort of variable about them so we can draw conclusions about that population. All right, there are two very important variables that you need to have down, okay? The first one is a categorical variable. It takes on values that are category names of group labels. What do I mean? Let me break it down maybe simpler for you. A categorical variable, here's some examples you might want to write down. Hair color is categorical. Eye color is categorical. Where you were born, okay? Your race is categorical. Your college that you want to go to is categorical. What is not categorical? Your age is not categorical. Your height is not categorical. Your GPA is not categorical, okay? Categorical. Where you live, hair color, eye color, all those. Not categorical. Age, height, how much money you make, your GPA. What are those variables? Those are called quantitative variables. A quantitative variable takes numerical values for a measured or counted quantity, okay? I can measure my height, right? Quantitative variable, that's a quantitative variable. My age, my weight, okay? How many children I have, okay? That's a counted quantity, but that is a quantitative variable. Okay, how much time did you spend on your phone last night? Quantitative variable, okay? Now here's the catch. Your zip code, 55427, that is not a quantitative variable. Why not? We don't measure that or count that. That's actually a categorical variable. Now here's another hint with a quantitative variable. With a quantitative variable, it makes sense to average them. I can find out the average number of siblings we have as a stats classroom. It does not make sense to gather all of your zip codes and find the average zip code. We don't do that. We don't add up 55427 plus 55428 plus 55446. We don't add those all up and divide by how many we have. That doesn't make sense, okay? So a quantitative variable, it makes sense. You can average them. They also often have units, okay? Another quantitative variable, if you've played a sport and you have a jersey number, that's a number, but it is not quantitative, right? It does not make sense, okay, to average up jersey number 16 plus jersey number 15 plus jersey number 10 and divide by how many we are. But some sports will calculate the team's GPA, the average GPA. Again, an average GPA. GPA is a quantitative variable. At this time, I want you just to take 30 seconds to reflect. Make sure you know the difference between a categorical variable and a quantitative variable, okay? If you have any questions, write those down and we can talk about them together as a class. Oh, I'm back on. Sorry, I made a mistake and so I had to edit. So hopefully this is working okay. We'll see. So what we have here is now, so we just talked about categorical, quantitative variables, variables and individuals. So now we're on to talking about something called a frequency table, okay? And so you can take a second and pause if you want to read these definitions, but let me just describe it, I think, better through this table, okay? So we have a two-way table here, right? And this two-way table is not, forgive me, it's actually just a one-way table. Do you know why that is? A two-way table has two variables. This one only has one variable, the highest degree you have obtained, okay? The highest degree you have obtained. So that was going through it quick, I'm sorry, and that happens to people quite a bit. They'll say, oh, I have a two-way table. No, this is actually just a one-way table, right? I have the highest degree someone has obtained out of 40 individuals, okay? So we have the frequency. So the frequency is how often we counted that. So we counted 2 people with a high school degree, 7 with a bachelor's, 20 with an MBA, 3 with a master's, 4 with a law degree, and 4 with a PhD, okay? If you're wondering what's an MBA, that's a master's in business, okay? Versus just a master's. I think it's actually a master's in business administration, okay? So, like I have my master's, but I do not have my MBA because I don't have a master's in business. Okay, so we have this frequency table here, right? It's counting up how many times each category happened. Okay, now what happens is we don't necessarily like counts in statistics. Rates are a better way to kind of tell a picture about what's going on, right? 2 doesn't tell us the same information that 0.05 does, right? So this relative frequency, what is that? Relative frequency is the fraction of times an answer occurs, okay? To find the relative frequencies, divide each frequency by the total number of individuals in the sample. So it's really the percentage of the time that occurs. So 2 out of 40 gives us 5%. So 5% of my sample had a high school degree. That gives us a little more information than just saying 2 people had a high school degree. If we know what that percentage is, it's just a better picture for us, okay? All right, so the relative frequency again. So this is the relative frequency, and sometimes we just see a relative frequency table. So you can imagine that this would be gone here, and you would just see out of everyone sampled, 5% of them had a high school degree. 17.5% of them had a bachelor's. 50% of them had their MBA. 7.5% of them had their master's, so on and so forth. Again, if you're questioning how we got that, we start with this frequency table. We have to start with the frequency table in order to get to the relative frequency table. We don't always see it displayed, but we have to start with the counts in order to get to the percentages. So 2 divided by 40, that gives us 0.05. 7 divided by our total 40 gives us 0.175, and so on and so forth. Questions? Pause, reflect. What should you have learned from this? I know what a frequency table is. I also know what relative frequency is. Okay, so now what I want to look at with you guys is when we're talking about categorical variables, how do we display them? So the categorical variable I have right here is your favorite type of movie. And then you can see we have comedy, action, romance, drama, and sci-fi. So we can display the categorical variable of your favorite type of movie through the use of a bar graph. You'll notice on the x-axis down here, we have each individual part of the favorite type of movie that was recorded. So comedy, action, blah, 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 right? And then over here, we have the people. How many people liked comedy? 4. How many people liked action? It looks about 5, so on and so forth. So you should be able to read a bar graph. You should also be able to make one. Could you, looking at this data, make an x-axis and put high school, bachelor's, MBA, master's, something like this? Now I'm doing it on with my trusty mouse here, so it's going to look a little messy. But could you put master or high school, right? Bachelor's, so on and so forth. And then this y-axis, well, what would that be? It looks like our minimum is 2, our maximum is 20. So maybe we'd go by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up to 20, right? And then for the high school, we have 2 people who got a high school degree. So I'd go up here. Now, in the statistics world, guys, if you do not label things, you will get docked on the AP exam. Labeling is not difficult, okay? Don't lose points for something that's not difficult, okay? So we would have a title, highest degree obtained in your household, okay? We would have people over here. Down here, we would put degree, high school, bachelor's, MBA, so on and so forth. So ask yourself, could you make a bar graph on your own, right? Could you make a bar graph on your own? If you can't make a note, let me know in office hours. Okay, so next what we have is we have something called a side-by-side bar graph. And in this case, you can see they're actually looking at relative frequency, and they're comparing men and women. So you can do relative frequency, you can do counted data. It just depends on what's being asked. I'm going to go through relative frequency with you here in another graph, but right now I want to go to that old two-way table that we looked at, okay? So here we could do a side-by-side bar graph. So let me kind of get it started for you, and I'm going to use my trusty iPad here to see if I can draw a little bit nicer for you. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm going to just get you started. Could you do this one on your own as well? Okay. So let's say I want to look at people's hair colors. That's my kind of variable of interest right now, right? And give me a second. I got to get rid of this real quick. Sorry, guys. So I did a little survey and I looked and I said, okay, hey, I have 20 people, and I didn't really do this. I just got this from Mr. Jans, actually, this table. And down here, it doesn't matter what you put on your x-axis, especially in this case, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't really matter, okay? So I think I said I was going to look at the hair color, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, first one's blonde, red, brown, and black. Okay. Now, within those categories, I also looked at what type of eye color they had, right? So you can see, well, with the blonde people, 2 of them had blue eye color, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to say, well, it looks like in here, the highest number went up to 7, okay? So I'm going to go back to my black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay? And then, again, I'm looking at people with blonde hair right now. And out of the people with blonde hair, 2 of them had blue eyes, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, make a little graph. 2 of them had blue eyes. Shoot, I wanted that to be blue. Oh, well, doesn't matter, okay? Now, out of everyone with blonde hair, 1 of them had green eyes. So a side-by-side bar graph right next to it, touching it. And maybe I'll do like a little polka dots there, right? Those are my little polka dots, okay? Out of all the blonde people, 2 of them had brown eyes, okay? And that maybe, let's see if I can get a different color again. There we go, okay? And then out of all the blonde people, 1 of them had a black eye color, okay? So I'm gonna make my little, let's do, And what I need here, you guys, is I need then to have a key, right? So I would say this represented blue eyes, okay? Polka dots, that represented people with green eyes. The purple, that represented people with brown eyes. Okay. And then the black, okay, was actually red. So the red represented people with black eyes. Okay, so hopefully I want you to ask yourself now, could I continue this up? Could I keep going with this? If you're not certain, I would suggest try it. Write it down, and then during office hours or during a whole group class, you could check with me and say, hey, I continued what you showed me for the blonde hair people, okay? See if you could do the same thing for the red. Now, there does need to have a little bit of a space there, and some people can read that. Now, this chunk here is for the red-haired people. This chunk here is for the brown-haired people. This chunk here is for the black-haired people, okay? A side-by-side bar graph. Could you do this on your own? You let me know, yes or no, or just let me know if you can't, and I'll help you individually. Okay, finally, a segmented bar graph, okay? A segmented bar graph is always dealing with percentages, okay? So I actually want to go through that with you right now. Again, get you started on it, see if you can finish it, and then we're done for the day. You guys are doing great. Keep it up. What I want to look at is I want to look at this chart here, okay? Now, a segmented bar graph is going to look a little different, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to have percentages always over here on the left-hand side, okay? So this would be percentages. Oh, so big. I don't want it that big. Okay. And then on the x-axis then, you would have your category. So our category in this case was high school. I think the next one's bachelor's, right? MBA. And master's. Law. And PhD, okay? Now, a percentage is always out of 100, so an easy way to do it is just to go by like tens. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I'm going to mark that as 50%. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Now, a little misleading there. It's not perfect amount of spacing, but that's okay for now. Okay, so how am I going to make a segmented bar graph? What we do is we look at each individual row as out of 100%. So out of all of these people, okay, right, that were interviewed, 5% of them had a high school degree. Okay, so what we do then is we say high school, right, HS. 5% had a high school degree. So if this is 10, I'm going to go like this. Right? Which means if 5% of them had a high school degree, then 95% of them, whoa, baby, I'm using my mouse. See if my pen would make it nicer. Oh, not really, huh? Okay. 95 of them did not have a high school degree. Let's move on. If you don't get it yet, I'll keep helping you hopefully here. Out of everyone interviewed for the bachelor's degree, or out of all, excuse me, rewind. Out of the 40 people interviewed, 17.5% of them had a bachelor's degree. So what would I do? Well, if this is 10, this is 20, 17.5 approximately. Yes, they had a bachelor's degree. So I'll put a B here, which means the rest of them did not. What is that, 82.5? Okay, out of the 40 people interviewed, 50% of them had their MBA. Okay, so yes, 50%. Let's go all the way up to the 50%. 50% of them had the MBA, which means the other 50% did not have their MBA. I'm going to ask you a question. Could you keep this up on your own? Could you finish this up? I want you to try it on your own. See if you could finish it the right way, and then come to me if you have any questions. Now, there should be a key. When we talked about this red, what did that red mean? Yes, that was the highest degree obtained. So right here, this 5% of people, yes, the high school degree was the highest degree they obtained. 95% it wasn't. So green, we would put no or something like that. Okay, guys, I think that's all I have for you today. Now you're going to be ready for the practice, and we'll talk about that together as a class. What should you have learned from today? Okay, you should have learned some basic definitions. The big one is the categorical variable versus the quantitative variable. You should know how to read a two-way table. You should know that when we graph categorical variables, right, we use a bar graph, or we can use a side-by-side bar graph if there's a couple variables we're looking at, or we can use a segmented bar graph when we're talking about percentages. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for an awesome day.